So we have just hit record on this interview, and I'm very excited to be interviewing Taylor today. I'm excited because I think I'm going to gain a lot out of this interview, and then anyone watching will be able to gain some insight into what Taylor does with their clinic, Phoenix Clinic, as well as in Taylor's practice as a therapist. So my name is Olivia. My pronouns are she, they, and I am the communications director at Therapy Access Project. A little bit about Therapy Access Project. We were founded for the purpose of matching Black, Brown, Indigenous, and queer individuals with therapists that validate their identities and lived experiences. And then we also work towards disseminating resources and information specifically to individuals who have been disproportionately served by the mental health care system. And then I am currently located in Bloomington, Illinois, which is in a town built on the ancestral homeland of many indigenous tribes, including the Kickapoo, who were forced to move west of the Mississippi. This is also the ancestral homeland of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Oglala Sioux, and Miami Nation. And I would like to use this opportunity to recognize the erasure, genocide, displacement, and continued injustices perpetuated by non-Native settlers and the United States government upon all Native tribes. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Taylor and let her introduce herself and her clinic.
Absolutely. I appreciate your wonderful introduction. It really sets the tone for our time. Like you said, I am Taylor Pettway. I am a marriage and family therapist and an executive director and our lead champion at Phoenix Clinic. And I'm also an educator, licensed as a middle school educator. And so I am grateful to be here. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm grateful to be in this space to share more about the work that we do and look forward to engaging today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So we can go ahead and get into the questions. So if you just want to tell us a little bit more about Phoenix Clinic and, why you founded it, that would be great.
Absolutely. I think the important place to start is that I'm from the South. So I have been a transplant to Chicago almost 8 years. And as I mentioned, I was previously an educator. So I was born and raised between Alabama and Georgia. And so prior to coming to Chicago, I was teaching middle school English. I was teaching sixth grade English. And so the great thing about teaching and my experience with teaching is that there's a gift there. I love to be able to do it, especially with young folks. But I knew that the impact that I wanted to have, I knew what the calling was on my life was bigger than the classroom. But what we know about communities of color and Black communities is that folks bring the things that they think we want versus asking communities what they need. And so teaching allowed me to get a chance to see what really was needed in our community. I worked with a lot of students, and what I realized is that if they go home, if they go to grandma's house or go to dad's house, if there's not housing stability, right? Or from spring break in the week that you see of any type of social emotional support that you give students, uh, isn't sticky, doesn't stick often. And also, I would call all 120 parents at the beginning of the school year. And so, you develop relationships, folks call you, folks are wanting to connect with you, and you realize that there aren't a lot of models to be able to support co-parents when that's a lot of what our families look like. And so I left the classroom because I wanted to figure out how to be a light in that space. And so Northwestern promised me that they would teach me how to do systemic work in the community. I think what I appreciate about being a marriage and family therapist versus a counselor or a social worker is that you get the specialized training that's necessary to work with more than one person in the therapy room. And so I really value that. And so they would teach us how to do therapy with people outside of the clinic room, how to teach us to do therapy in a way that bridges communities. And so I tried to take that and run with that. And so I bring all of that up because Phoenix Clinic story is interwoven with mine. I had this desire to be able to connect something and bring something larger in a way that Chicago is oversaturated in a great way with mental health. The South is less so. And so I, have the desire, and I'm still headed home to be able to take mental health on a larger scale back to the South. But for now, there's still a need here in Chicago, and still a place to gather resources and help folks get connected, help folks that have been on the borderlands really of our society and the mental health sphere, to help them get the access to services that they need. And so that's how Phoenix Clinic was born. I signed on the dotted line to build out the clinic March 8th of 2020. And that matters because we shut down several
Yes.
days here. And so Josh Hetherington, who is the owner of the Chicago Center for Relationship Counseling, where I also see my clients and have a caseload, he had this idea for a clinic. And so we powered up together and said that we figure out how to be able to build this out. And so we worked over those first 6 months in 2020 to really develop relationships, connect with the community, really do our own type of needs assessment to figure out what was needed and how we could serve. And so in September of 2020, we brought in our first cohort of students after developing partnerships with other institutions. And what's really important about, I think, Phoenix Clinic is that our mission is twofold. We are committed to providing access to affordable, reduced fee therapy services to individuals, couples, and families, but especially to Black communities, communities of color, and communities with limited financial resources. You tell us what it is that you can pay between $0 and $50, and we get you connected to services as if you were paying it because you deserve equitable and quality services. We appreciate holding the dignity of our clients, so we don't ask for bank statements and ask you to prove yourself. And so far, we've been able to continue that and have folks be honest about how to use our system. And the second part of our mission is that we provide clinical training to graduate student therapists that are looking to get their hours. And so we have partnerships with, of course, Northwestern, Northeastern Illinois University, and DePaul, and Adler University. And so we get their students, and there are three really strong tenets of our clinical training. One, that it's sound clinical training, right? That you know what to do in a therapy room, and also that it is systemic. We're training them with the specialized training that we've received on how to deal with multiple people in the room. And that's important because if you go to a lot of community mental health clinics, they're going to work with an individual, right? They may have a couple of sessions where they work with someone else, but they don't have the resources or the training to be able to do that. And so it's really important for us to be able to do that, because if we have healthy families, if we have healthy relationships, we have healthy children, we have healthy citizens, right? And we have a chance at a healthier world. And so the sound clinical training is important to us, in addition to the cultural responsiveness, right? And quite frankly, the equitable and anti-racist training that we provide, from the intake process to what happens in the therapy room, is really important for us to consider context and how to support people and make folks that have experienced a significant amount of systemic harm need a significant amount of systemic support from the beginning of their process to, termination and going out into the world and figuring out how they take what they've gotten from therapy to figure out, how do I thrive a little bit versus having to survive in a way that we've had to in our society for a long time. And the third tenet of our program is the professional development is really important. We want to help folks figure out how they bring mental health reform in their little piece of the world. We can't do it all. We can only do what we can in our little piece of Chicago. And so how do we support and cultivate other new therapists to be change agents and to figure out, do I want to open up my own practice? Do I want to connect here? What resources do I want to bring as I think about how I want to launch into becoming a mental health professional focused on justice in the world? And so that's the the long and the short of where my story meets what we do at Phoenix Clinic.
Yeah, that's everything you're doing is so important, but I especially love how you are putting so much work into assessing the actual needs of the community surrounding you rather than just, you know, coming from, you know, any space of privilege. You know, you were able to go to attend school, so like that is a privilege in and of itself, and that can definitely, you know, kind of determine sometimes what people think other individuals need, and instead of actually going out and saying what do you need and catering to that rather than saying this is what I think you need. So I really love that part of it, along with everything else that Phoenix Clinics embodies. Um so you already answered where Phoenix Clinic is located. So it's located in Chicago, but you're kind of looking towards expanding that and taking it on to different locations that also need your support. So that's awesome. So what made you want to become a therapist?
Yeah, that's such a great question to answer every time. And I think, like a lot of healers, we come to this work because we're trying to figure out our own stuff too, right? Like if based on my historical experiences, based on what it is that I have seen, um, how do I make sense of the world? And so I think becoming a therapist was me trying to make sense of my own world, right? I ended up being the middle person, right? I ended up being the person that can hear and that can understand a lot of the gifts that I have that make me a pretty okay therapist are things that I got honest, right? And how I'm able to understand and having a gift for being tactful, but being authentic and being honest. And so those were characteristics that I've had since I was a little girl. And I think at some point, there is how do I plug this in and how do I make this useful? I went to Spelman College, which is a school, a historically Black college made especially for Black women. And so in going to Spelman, you figure out a lot. I think in undergrad, people figure out who they are, figure out who they want to be, or they at least get started with that. And so I majored in psychology and had a chance to really what I realized is I want to practice in this, right? I think a lot of folks who get the opportunity to go to college realize, oh, I could do research, right? I could go into this space. But in some ways, I was going to be removed from people in that way. And so I realized, how do I figure out how I practice, right? And so having a chance to practice connected me to teaching and then connected me to therapy. And so it was a way to merge my natural skills that I had along with my heart for community. I am raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and so I'm raised and loved on and reared by folks that were integral parts in the civil rights movement. And so organizing is in my blood. And so how do I build this, this kind child with this heart for organizing? And then I think what I gathered from Spelman, a part of what I gathered was structure and organization, right? There's a way to organize community. There's a way to organize our hearts and minds that actually gets us to what we want, the progress that we want to see. And so with all of those things, therapy found a space in that way. And I'm really grateful to continue to be able to try to make sense of this life I've been given.
Yeah. And I love your mission too of helping other therapists on their journey of helping others, because I think that's so important. So, um, let's see. Are there any identities that you focus on working with in particular in your therapy practice?
So I work with, similar to the mission of the mission of the clinic is also my own personal mission. I am available and able to work with all folks, individuals, couples, and families. But I'm especially here to support Black folks. It's important to me that folks see someone in the therapy room that looks like them, that has some that, you know, has a chance at some shared experiences to them. I always like to tell folks, we have a conversation about that with anyone that I work with, right? What are you looking for in a therapist? What's important? And so when folks bring up that they are looking for a Black therapist or looking for a person of color, I always, you know, tell them that that's important to me and it's why I show up. But also, my experience as a Black person or as a person of color may look different than yours, right? And so that we can have a conversation and come to that. But the thought is that the gap will be smaller. Between our experience, and so that we can spend more time focused on the stuff that you actually came here to talk about than you having to explain to me how you got there and the way that things work in that way. And so I end up working with um, pretty evenly a number of couples, and generally quite a lot of Black couples, and end up working with a number of individual men and individual women that come to the work for a number of issues, working through infidelity, working through the end of relationships and how to emerge back into life, helping folks manage anxiety and just general, you know, emotion regulation. And so those are generally the populations that show up in my own private practice. I think from how I organize my bio and what it is that it says, it makes sure to grab at the folks that it's seeking, right? That's important to me to use language that says that all are welcome here. And I'm especially for folks without having to say that, because I want folks to feel open and like they can come to me. And so I end up working with a lot of folks of color, but Black folks find me.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Let's see. What do you find most rewarding about working with your current clients?
I really value that doing the work with alongside my clients keeps me doing the work for myself. Um, in order to show up well and help clients untangle the problems and the solutions of their lives, I am convicted every time. Right, I have something to take home with me and my homework every time to try to figure out how I can be healthier and how I can be more authentic in how I show up. And so I do that work with my clients, but that work shows up in my own life. And so I'm grateful for the mutuality of that experience. And it's really important to me. It's important that I am healthy for them, but that this work keeps me healthy too. Yeah, so that's what I enjoy the most.
Yeah. Um, can you elaborate on the specific types of therapeutic services offered at Phoenix Clinic?
Yes, so we are at a place where we only offered a smaller amount of services. We have a growing gambit of services, which is really exciting. We still hold true to our individual couple and family therapy. As I mentioned, here just in the city, you can go to a community mental health clinic or you can go to a clinic and they're going to have an individual space for you, right? And maybe not consider that you are an individual who is in a work system, is in a family system, is in a sibling system. And so it's really important for us to, when we talk to you, when we bring in the intake, we're like, you know, or do we have all the people in the room that we need, right? Because if it's just you, we can do that work. But if you're telling me that a lot of the issues that you're naming are coming from issues working with your, you know, with your spouse or with your child, maybe it makes sense to bring them to the room. And so that's something that's really important, a really important conversation for us to have in the beginning. So we offer individual, couple, and family therapy services. We also last year expanded into offering support group and group therapy services to schools, to organizations, departments, and teams. And so someone from a school or someone from a township can reach out to us and we'll come in and we really, versus like saying, hey, we're going to do a support group on communication. We're going to do a support group on team effort, right? Or working together as a team, we're able to collaborate with the leadership and with the staff to figure out what would be, if you're saying you need support, what do you need support with, and how do we develop this support group to best serve you? And so I appreciate that we are customizable and flexible and personalized in what it is that we offer in that way. And so we offer those support group services, and we also offer training, training to organizations that are looking to figure out how am I not just more equitable, but also how am I more systemic in nature. So for example, at integrated health organizations or businesses, they have a doctor, they'll have a physical therapist on board, they'll have a mental health therapist. How do we figure out how to help, how do we train this team or support this team and figuring out how they can move better together as a team to better support the services of the clients that they serve? And so we offer those individual, couple, and family therapy, the support group services, as well as the training services that we offer to organizations. So our services are expanding.
Yeah. I love that how it's flexible and how, again, it's, client-centered and figuring out what the needs of both the individual clients are and then the groups that you're working with as well to see how you can serve them without, going in and saying, "This is how I think we can serve you." It's how
Yeah.
can I serve you? And
Yeah.
yeah. Can you talk about the importance of Phoenix Clinic's pay what you can model and how this has positively impacted individuals or families within the community?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think it's important here to as an English teacher, language is important to me, and so I think it's important to define some things. What we find in the therapy world, oftentimes we call it sliding scale, right? And what that means is that a therapist has a fee. And it's usually a high fee because we put a lot of resources into doing what it is. And so folks can, based on where they are and what they want to do, they can slide, and that means that they'll lower their price to a price that feels comfortable for the therapist to do this work, but also probably better accommodates what the client may need, right? So if I slide down from 150 to 100 or 75, and so that's nice, and that still leaves whole communities without access
Mm.
to therapy because of sliding scale. And so what we offer is reduced fee, right? We offer an affordable fee, right? We start at 0 and only go to 50 because the hope is that we want to get those folks that sliding scale doesn't reach, folks that their insurance may not cover it. They have county care, but their insurance doesn't cover mental health services in this way. And so it's really important. That's been central to our practice. We started there. And so that we want folks to be able to make choice. Having agency is really important. And so if you're like, no, I can afford, this is important, I want to invest in this, I'm going to pay you $40 for this. We want you to feel like your dignity and your agency is being honored in that way, right? If you're saying, I really need this and I got $5, then that's what we got. Right. And so it's really critical, and it's critical to making sure that we reach the populations that we reach, making sure that we reach not only communities of color, but also that we reach queer communities, right? That we reach communities that inherently have difficulty accessing financial resources and accessing systemic resources. And so, it's a way to say, hey, you can come here and figure that out. And so it's become really central to our practice here. And I don't know if I remember the other part of your question. You asked about why the pay what you can model
Just
was important in the other piece.
how it's positively impacted individuals and families in the community.
Yeah, it's helped us reach who we want to reach. And we also have a process where even if you start with us and say you start with us at your fee, you said $40, you say, I've lost my job. Something has shifted for me. We can be able to, you can coordinate with your therapist to figure out how do we adjust your fee to make sure that it meets the changes in the circumstances of life.
That's awesome. How does Phoenix Clinic collaborate with community resources to enhance the support provided to clients?
Yes. So when folks ask, what makes you different than someone else, right? And so aside from our what we do that's systemic in nature, I think, which is one of the ways that Phoenix Clinic is nuanced in its approach, being able to provide connection to community resources or therapeutic case management is really important to us. So I was in I worked in child welfare for some time. And so I was really connected to a lot of the stronger systems and institutions that exist for us here in our society and here in the US. And so what was half of my job as a therapist in child welfare was case management. It was therapeutic case management, which means that I am, more than just like saying you have to do something. I'm working with you and figuring out, I'm calling these folks, I'm helping you, I'm calling us on three-way. I'm really working to help us get connected. And so I took those pieces, that particular piece from that area of life and added it to the clinic because helping our folks get the resources they need to sustain their therapy progress is important. Talk therapy may not be all they need. If you don't have access to healthier foods, if you don't have access to childcare, right? We need to help so that you feel like you can have a session where you can think. We need to help you figure that out so that you can get the therapeutic support that you need. And also, when you wrap up with therapy, this episode of therapy, we want to make sure that your progress can be sustained. And so, how do we help connect you to community resources, right? Do you need a dance class, right? So that you can continue to do that? Do you need to join a foster parent group because that would sustain the progress? So at every point in the process for a client, we're talking about what community resources could be helpful for them, but it's a part of what we do at the clinic is provide that therapeutic case management and are partnered with other community organizations to really be a community. We don't want to just here's a list of people that you can call. I want to say, hey, I can call this person, I can email this person over here so that there's more of a warm handoff for you to access this service versus just, becoming another number on the list.
Yeah, I think that's so important, not only in mental health care services, but, social services at large to be in connection with the other organizations in the community. And that's definitely something that I see lacking. My full-time job is working at a shelter for those experiencing homelessness. So seeing the way, and I also live like 2 hours south of Chicago, so it's not as
Mhm.
there's not as much communication between those services. So what you're doing is so important. And I know that you know that, but it's so important to recognize just what you're doing. So
Absolutely. It's we say this to our partners and to people that we connect with. Like, I want to get on the phone with you, right? I want to come meet you. I want to connect because we don't want to just say we're about the community, right?
mhm,
We want to be about it.
yeah. How does Phoenix Clinic ensure equitable access to therapeutic services for Black communities, communities of color, and those with financial limitations?
Yeah, I would like we have mentioned, our pay what you can model is really important to creating those access points. And also um, partnering with organizations that serve these communities. If it's an organization like a food pantry, right, or in a particular neighborhood, or if it's a church in a particular neighborhood, right, that we're able to get connected to them in this way and say, hey, if you have folks that have a higher level of care, then it feels like you all can meet right here in this place, that you have someone that you can say they need to call and say they can reach out. So developing referral partnerships at the places that those communities are a part of is really important in how we continue to keep access. Also, um, how we develop any materials that go out and that are front facing about the clinic also have a lot to do with access.
Mhm.
Our website, there's a lot that went into developing our website so that it felt accessible to folks of color, even from the colors of the website and how things are organized. All of those things, in some ways, when you are a part of communities that have been on the borderlands, those things say, hey, this is a space for us. This is where we can come and be seen and be heard. And so a lot of effort goes into developing our printed materials and our marketing materials so that if someone, on the off chance happens to see us, they're like, oh, this place looks warm, and at least that I can give a try. And so those are some key ways, developing these referral partnerships, being really thoughtful about the materials that go out about Phoenix Clinic are ways that we create access. And also when we have these when we have these opportunities that are outside of the clinic room, right? So if there are training opportunities or support group opportunities that we're able to offer, we make sure that they also know about the other services that Phoenix Clinic offers. We continue to have partnerships. We reach out and we say, hey, Happy New Year. I hope you're doing well. And we stay on these folks' minds so that if someone comes in there in need, they'll think of Phoenix.
Yeah, that's so important. How does Phoenix Clinic foster a culturally responsive environment for clients with diverse backgrounds?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is where I think the training that it is that we offer, the folks that are training our graduate student therapists that are also training and supervising our staff therapists is really important. The curriculum that we use to onboard graduate student therapists, but also our staff therapists is empirically sound, right? And so we're just not pulling things out of a hat. What does research say about how we train clinicians that we want to be equitable and anti-racist and culturally responsive, and train them to be able to support those same types of folks in the room. And so that's really important to us on how we do that. And so when someone starts with us, whether they're in the intern process, probably the onboarding process probably lasts about 2 months or so, 2.5 months. And for a staff associate therapist, that's someone that's graduated, working towards licensure, or already licensed, their onboarding process may be a month or so, just kind of really helping them understand the mission and figure out where the mission is of Phoenix Clinic, but also how do I engage with this curriculum that's preparing me to support folks systemically in the therapy room. And so that training throughout a person's tenure with us is really important. We also have, pulling back on those partnerships, the referral partnerships are important, but also partnered with organizations that provide other trainings in across the city, right? We don't in any way purport that we have it all here under Phoenix Clinic. There are organizations like Live Oak that provide significant training to support relationally diverse clients, that support queer folks. And so we engage in those trainings as a team. We have people, you're able to engage. If you want to grow in this way, you can participate in that. And so we can do those things for free. Because of the partnerships that we have. And so the training element is super important to us. We tell folks there are a set amount of mandated trainings that we want you to engage. And then from there, you can choose. From there, we want you to be able to choose what works for you. And again, the same choice and agency that we like to give our clients, we like to give our therapists to be able to help them support the folks that are coming into the therapy room with them.
Yeah. What distinguishes Phoenix Clinic's approach to clinical training from other institutions?
Yeah, I feel like we
I
hit
know, same
it.
thing. Yeah.
But yeah, just to highlight the systemic nature of what it is that we offer, the focus on community resources is really important to us. And then just the focus on how can you become a change agent more than just another therapist, another private practice therapist, and someone else. We want to spark the folks that are going to continue to be the leaders in the field of mental health.
The last one we've kind of covered, so I'll just do a different one that I normally do with therapists at the end. But do you have any tips for therapy seekers to get more out of their sessions with their therapists?
Mhm. I want to encourage uh, clients, folks that are considering therapy, that therapy is what you make it. It is your space. You have a lot more agency and choice over what it looks like. Folks come to therapy and they're like, whatever the therapist wants to do is fine, right? I'm just gonna follow this. You likely have had some ideas on what you think will be helpful. And
Mhm.
that's what's going to be helpful to help you create a space where you can thrive, right? And I think that's really important because it's not something that we see in a lot of spaces. In a lot of spaces and a lot of systemic spaces and institutional spaces, we have to go in there and we have to acquiesce to whatever the space is. And therapy allows you to create, you to define your goals. What do I want the beginning of the session to look like? What do I want the structure of therapy to look like in the next couple of months? And so I'd like to encourage you that you can give feedback to these therapists and these people because it helps them figure out how to serve you better. And so it's a space that is supposed to be customizable for you because if it is, you can get further that way.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this interview. I'm going to go ahead and plug your socials.
Yeah.
So, your Instagram it's just Phoenix Clinic, right? Is that correct, or is it?
Instagram is Phoenix Clinic Shy because we
Okay.
couldn't get anything on there.
Oh,
So
I
that is
see it now. Yeah, Phoenix Clinic. Okay. And then your website is phoenixclinic.org, correct?
it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, folks can come find us and connect with us. If you know someone who's interested in services, if you know someone who, is interested just in learning, maybe it is someone that wants to continue to support our work, right? And help us do this work because we cannot do this work alone. Come find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'll be in contact about, where we're gonna post this interview and all of that. And if you want to like collab on Instagram, like when we do make a post about it, that would be awesome. But yeah, thank you so much, Taylor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Olivia. I enjoyed being able to chat today. I hope that I answered all the questions well, and let me know if you need anything else, and I look forward to staying in contact.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.